I'm Miri Cypers, and I am the Regional Director for the ADL in the Pacific Northwest. We serve the broader region, but I'm based in Seattle, and I've held this position for 4 years.
Can you tell me about what the ADL in the Pacific Northwest does, the geographic region it encompasses, and overall, for those not familiar, what the ADL is?
The ADL is a national organization that works at higher levels and on the ground and even globally since 1913. So we're over a century old, and our mission has always been to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to ensure fair and just treatment of all.
It looks here like some of this has changed with in the recent years as anti-Semitism and the COVID pandemic have affected life for everybody. Can you tell me a little bit about how you have dealt with that at ADL?
We're in a climate right now with a lot of challenges. I think layered on COVID has just been a climate of rising anti-Semitism and hate and extremism over the past couple of years. So it's really been a time where we at ADL are on high alert, fighting hate in our communities, speaking out, really making efforts to scale our programs. And on top of that, with COVID, really grappling with how can we be a vibrant community-based organization that is serving people, that is doing the important work that we do in communities, but is still reaching people. And COVID has been a huge challenge for us, but also a blessing, because I think it's pushed us to make our work more virtual, more accessible, and more equitable.
Can you tell me about some of the ways that you've fought the this rising anti-Semitism in recent years?
ADL has always had this theory of change that has been rooted in the idea that is really powerful, that's embedded in our mission, that none of us are free until all of us are free. We fight anti-Semitism and hate, and we work for the just treatment of all. So I think that important through line is something that has really carried with us, especially today, as we've seen not only the Jewish community, but other marginalized communities experience discrimination in different forms of injustice. And I think ADL's approach is really powerful because our belief is that there's no silver bullet to the issue of hate. It's educating the next generation around addressing bias and anti-Semitism, working hand in hand with school communities and K-12 schools to create places of belonging for all students. We're incredibly proud that we've scaled our No Place for Hate initiative over the past few years to now reach 45,000 students, mostly across Washington and Oregon in K-12 schools, in addition to droves of more educators than ever before. We also are dedicated to tracking and collecting data and speaking out about the rise of hate and extremism. We have another bucket that's focused specifically on advocacy, where we are on the ground working in local, state, federal, and even in the courts to advance civil rights policies. That is a really crucial piece of the puzzle. And then the final one, in the final bucket that we do here in the Pacific Northwest and across the country, is we actually intake reports about hate when different communities experience anti-Semitism or racism or xenophobia. And we have staff here that intakes that data, that works with individuals and communities impacted by hate to offer our resources and our expertise and our advocacy. And we track all of that and compile it and share it with the public.
So going through those 4 main areas, it sounds like, let's start with the outreach to students. I have to imagine that's changed a lot with the COVID pandemic.
Our work has changed so much around education. I think even before the pandemic, we recognize that if we want to be an organization that is truly reaching more students and scaling the work to make the kind of societal impact that we need to make to fight back against hate and push it to the fringes and create more of a climate of inclusion and respect and belonging for everybody, we recognize that we really had to work hard to think about digitizing, doing more self-paced online learning for students, and thinking about how to make our work more accessible. So these were all strategies and conversations we were already pursuing, but COVID accelerated everything. And I think in a lot of powerful ways. We were able to bring all of our programs virtual, which isn't to say we don't still do them in person, especially as the pandemic improves. But by doing it virtually, we were able to reach so many more students and educators.
With the digital learning, I'm curious if that has changed at all with your relationship with national ADL chapters or other regional directors. Have you shared the programming or hosted national events that you normally couldn't? I'm curious to learn more about that.
One of the things that ADL did really early on in the pandemic was seize on this idea that you can fight hate from home. A really powerful program that did originate early on from the National ADL was the Fighting Hate from Home series, which is an ongoing series that gives people across the country who want to plug in and learn about the most interesting and compelling issues of the day to have that kind of outlet. I think what we found here regionally is there was a tremendous amount of interest, a surge, a wave of people in the beginning who really wanted to learn from ADL Pacific Northwest about what were the most compelling and interesting civil rights and anti-hate issues of the day. And we brought in experts from across the region to talk about the history of racism and to do interactive trainings around addressing bias and having courageous conversations. So something that we came up with a lot of community and staff input was actually starting a podcast called Pacific Northwest Coffee and Conversation. And I think because the work of ADL can be really heavy and hard, we tried to focus on the uplifting stories of leaders in the Pacific Northwest who are fighting for social justice and equity in their communities and fighting hate. And it gave us a real opportunity to shine a light on some leaders who are really well known, who work at big companies like Microsoft or who are incredible business owners, but also people that maybe are doing the day-to-day work that are less known, who are real jewels in their community, pushing for change in education or doing a variety of things that are super admirable.
You mentioned fight hate from home. I'm curious to learn more. Have you found, as you track hate, have you found hate and other crimes of that nature moving into the digital world more than previously?
I think the ADL is really uniquely positioned as an organization that's been both fighting for civil rights for over a century and fighting hate, to be a unique organization that understands the balance of free speech, but also the migration of hate to online and how it impacts marginalized communities. And several years ago, under the leadership of our new CEO, who's been there for about 5 years now, Jonathan Greenblatt, we as an organization identified that hate is happening on the ground and it's happening online. And the way that it happens isn't always randomized. It's really targeting people because of their identities, because they're members of marginalized communities. And anti-Semitism and hate are actually flourishing in online spaces in ways that we've never really seen before.
Have you noticed any trends as you work across the Pacific Northwest?
I would say one of the hard things about serving the greater Pacific Northwest is that it's just such a big geography. And when you're talking about Seattle or Portland or more denser urban areas versus more rural areas, the divides are really different in demographics and in political affiliations and all of those things. So I feel fortunate though, because I think it's a constant learning curve for our staff to be constantly learning from the regions that we serve about the different issues, challenges, and also different cultural pieces that make certain states or areas unique. But I think what we generally see is that, unfortunately, every single community in the country is impacted by prejudice or bigotry at some point in time, and these kinds of things aren't unique. What we've seen, a lot of trends that I've noticed over the past couple of years that I've been with the ADL, a few of them are that schools are microcosms for society at large. So when you see hate and extremism becoming more normalized, they become more normalized in school, and we see a lot more acts of bias and xenophobia and anti-Semitism and racism in K through 12 environments. I also just think on a more macro picture, both nationally and in all of the different states we work in, we see that hate and extremism are growing, and that people who are affiliated with hate groups or who have hateful ideologies are a lot more emboldened than they were a couple of years ago. And I think another trend that we also see is that if you don't properly train law enforcement, if you don't speak out and educate the public, and if you don't have strong laws that really capture what's happening, underreporting is also going to be a huge issue that's going to be a big challenge in understanding the actual issue that's unfolding on the ground.
how do you think about outreach differently? As you said, you can fight hate from home, but how are you thinking about educating the citizens of the Pacific Northwest?
Some of the challenges that the past few years have really reinforced for me is that we need to dedicate just as much resources and attention to the work of schools as we do to the community at large. And it can't be an either or approach. It has to be both and. One demographic group that's unfortunately been really adversely impacted by COVID and xenophobia is the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, specifically the East Asian community that's been targeted. And we've actually been working on launching a pilot initiative in Seattle around bridging divides between the Asian and Jewish communities and thinking more about learning about shared history and identity and culture and what allyship looks like in challenging times. So I do think I really want to push our organization to be one that really dreams big about how we can be part of the social fabric of our different communities that encourages connection and community building, because I do think ultimately that does lead to a community that's healthier and that's safer and that's more inclusive for all people. I really have the privilege of working at a storied organization that's been on the ground in the Seattle area for over 75 years, fighting anti-Semitism and hate and ensuring the fair and just treatment of all people. That has been ADL's mission since our founding in 1913, and a really important aspect of the work that we continue to push and to do today.